Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Shall we continue? Yeah. So we start off with second act.
Like before Christ and after Christ, my life could be neatly divided into pre-14th April 1944 and post-14th April 1944. A new dance ballet called Kovalan was coming to Bombay in April. It was supposed to have a bit of Kathakali, Bharatnatyam, Manipuri and whatnot. One of those modern khichadis. Very fashionable. The story of Kovalan was the story of my life. It was about a man, Shankara Panikar, who was torn between two lovers, Mrinalini Sarabhai and Nandita Kriplani. But that was art. In real life, I was Shankara Panikar and the two women were Yajuvendra and Comrade Shashi.
Wasn't 14th April Shashiji's birthday? Maybe she's having a Shira and Pova birthday party. Maybe I should stitch a new bush shirt for the occasion. Maybe I should carry pedas. Maybe I'm not thinking straight. Maybe Yajuvendra has returned. Or maybe Gala Seth is not happy with my work and wants to substitute me with his nephew from Bachao. That reminds me, I better go and meet Kanwar Saab and get a list of ships visiting the docks. That way we can plan our provision supply. Oof, these are difficult times. The black market is flourishing. 1 gallon of kerosene costs 1 rupee. Imagine, the war must end. Mountbatten is planning to make an all-out effort on Japanese positions in Burma and Malaya. The Bombay port resembles a military headquarters with officers and men of the fighting wings of the Allied forces. Armed with my special permit, I take the train from Vadala to Balatpur on 12th April. This is a special train. Otherwise, my third-class monthly train pass of rupees 8 from Churchgate to Khar would have sufficed.
Love is such an irregular idea. It is so difficult to express it honestly. Why? I mean, look at man and his progress. He is planning to travel to the moon, explore the depths of the ocean, discover a cure for TB, do jugglery with numbers at the stock exchange. And yet, man has not been able to come up with a better option than I love you. It is so unfair to reduce all the great whirl and twirl of grand emotions to 3 bland words. I love you. Plus, when do you utter it? In the beginning, after 3 meetings, after a lifetime? There should be a handbook, especially for first-timers like me. Unless ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. Kitna complicated hai sab kuch. Love is too hazardous a business to leave to the discretion of humans.
So I examined the ships in the Manila folder in Kanwar Saab's office. He returned for lunch hungry and angry. Apparently he had examined a British ship, the Fort Steichen, a single screw coal burning vessel of 7,142 tons. The ship had unusual cargo. Kanwar Saab had made a meticulous list. He showed it to me boastfully. It said, in hold, number 1, sulfur weighing 325 tons and cotton weighing 268 tons. Above the sulfur bags there lay fish manure and 13,163 pieces of timber. In hold number 2, 187 tons of category C ammunition, plus cotton weighing 769 tons. Then there were 11,537 timber pieces, scrap iron, 42 old dynamos, cases of wireless sets and 168 tons of super sensitive category A ammunition, 1,089 small drums of oil. Hold number 3, 573 tons of lubricating oil and 58 tons of category A ammunition and 20 tons of RAF's inflammable aircraft dope along with 214 drums of oil. Hold number 4, 523 tons of explosives, 405 tons of cotton along with dry fruits. Hold number 5, 196 tons of cotton, dry fruits plus raisins, pieces of timber and 6,220 drums of oil. But what grabbed my eye was a tiny detail which mentioned that number 2 hold had an interesting consignment, gold. 1 million pounds sterlings addressed to a bank in Bombay. 31 wooden crates of gold.
Love is like gold, and all that glitters is not gold, I suppose. One of man's genuine failures has been love. He hasn't been able to remedy it or find a solution. Man has had 3 grand failures. He hasn't discovered a saucer and a cup that does not spill tea, a pressure cooker in which the handle does not come off, and a proper protocol for love, with rules and regulations.
Kanwar Saab was furious with the captain of the Fort Steichen for not abiding by Rule 46 of the Port Rules of International Code, whereby a ship carrying dangerous cargo should display a red flag. But Captain Naismith of Fort Steichen did not want to advertise the cargo of the ship to the enemy. Everyone was expecting a Pearl Harbor type attack on Bombay port. A few days ago, Madras port had been bombed.
That evening, on my way from the hospital, I picked up Ace lime juice from the shop. That, along with patata pawa, bhel puri and chivra, would be a fine nashta for Comrade Shashi. D-Day arrived. It was 14th April 1944.
It was 14th April 1944. There was something unusual in the air. German defences had collapsed. The Black Sea coast was about to fall into Russian hands. Gandhiji had malaria. While I was reading the newspaper, I had noticed a very young chap. His name was Devdutt Pishorimal Anand. He had left Lahore in 1943, got down at Bombay Central Railway Station with only 30 rupees in his pocket. He had managed to get a clerk's job in military accounts office. He wanted to become a movie star, it seems. What a thought. He had nothing going for him except he jumped all over the place, talked a lot and hummed in soor. I thought Nehru was much more handsome than him. Anyway, this Devdutt was raving about a film called Jawab by P.C. Barua. I asked, wasn't Barua the director of Devdas? I failed to understand why anyone should make a film about a drunkard. Then Bapu Rao Pendharkar, he told me I'm a Buddhu. He said, Devdas badi hit hai, naach, gana, pyar, tragedy. Even 100 years from now, people will say, Paisa bolta hai. Now that was the name of Pendharkar's film. He never lost an opportunity to publicize it.
14th April 1944. It was a sweltering hot Friday. Every year it gets hotter. Something must be done about the pollution from the motor cars, the mills, really. Bardash ki bhi koi had hoti hai. I was stuck in a procession in Dadar. It was the 51st birthday of Dr. Ambedkar. There were huge crowds. I followed a group of women. Perhaps with a bit of enterprise, I could have placed a garland of flowers around his neck. Mother would have been proud of me.
14th April 1944. I mustered courage and entered Derby Talkies. The name, it was rumoured, came into being because the owner had won a jackpot at the Derby. The film was Jawab. This was my first movie. I could have watched V. Shantaram's Mali at Novelty, but that was not to be. Fate played a part. Anyway, it's not as though cinema lost a big rasik in me. Subsequently, I saw only one other film, Gandhi by Attenborough. I never sat through either film. In Gandhi, I left the movie theatre. I could not tolerate the assassination of Gandhiji in the first 2 minutes. It was very real. That's why I say art must never imitate life. It's not good for the health,
14th April 1944. I was passing through the streets. Everything was as it should be. Automobile spare parts, Kanti photo studio, Anaj ki dukaan. Two men were sipping chai and discussing how Bhoiwada United defeated Maccabi Sports Club by 1 goal because the match was fixed. That the referee was purchased. Men will be men, no?
14th April 1944, Jawab was okay. It had a rich hero called Manoj, who sent to his future father-in-law for a rest cure. But Manoj loses his way and is offered shelter by a railway station master. This master has a pretty daughter called Kanan Devi, whose main objective in life is to make funny faces and sing songs. Manoj falls in love with this Kanan Devi. And then, even as the love story was about to climax, there was a huge explosion. The screen was ripped apart.
14th April 1944. It was 5 minutes past 4. I had reached Razak chamber. Just then there was a tremendous explosion. A Havaldar was standing on the pavement. His head was chopped off by a piece of metal that had flown through the air. I was stunned. People were running everywhere.
14th April 1944, it was 10 minutes past 4. There was a stampede in the theatre. Somehow I managed to jump over the gates. The sky was filled with flying white hot metal.
14th April 1944. It was 10 minutes past 4. Buildings were trembling. Splinters of glass flew from shattered windows. Flakes of hot livid ash and fire were falling haphazardly. I couldn't recognize Bhujwala. A few minutes ago he had lovely wavy black hair. Now he was bald. He kept shouting, "The Japs have come, the Japs have come, bhago, bhago." I believe he ran all the way to Bandra, full speed.
14th April 1944, burning bales, naphtha, debris, dense smoke and one huge boiler blocked the road. I ran and reached an open ground. Burnt limbs, soot were falling all around me.
14th April 1944. I limped and scrambled over the rubble. I wanted to get to Teen Sakina Manzil.
14th April 1944. There was a second explosion. 34 minutes after the first explosion, louder and much more brutal.
14th April 1944. In front of my eyes, Teen Sakina Manzil was crumbling. There was a big hole in its center. A piece of molten lead had crashed on its roof and fallen through and through all 5 floors, from roof to ground floor. Baba's shop was no more. Where was Baba? Where was Comrade Shashi?
In the open ground, my mind was racing. Someone mentioned the explosions were from a British ship at the docks. I put two and two together. It must be the fourth Steichen with its hundreds of tons of explosive bombs, oil, cotton, timber, sulfur. Fourth Steichen was a time bomb. Kanwar Saab was right. The ship laden with explosives should not have been allowed into the docks. It was illegal. An accidental spark would have triggered off the ammunition in the hold.
I was hurt. Bag में थोड़ा सा iodine लगा दिया और एक painkiller. I needed to get to a hospital. St. George was the closest, but it was in the dock area. क्या पता वहाँ क्या आफत आई होगी. So I decided to go towards GT hospital.
In the gutter, there was a dead man clutching onto a copy of Mumbai Samachar. He had been charred by the heat. I picked up the dead man's cycle. It was scorching hot. I raced to Teen Sakina Manzil. It had a hole in its heart. Where was Shashiji?
At GT hospital, I was treated. There I heard the ARP, which used to organize drills as prevention against air raids, was hiring temporary nurses. I volunteered. I was taking in a fancy Victoria to Baikala. सब कुछ तबाह हो गया था. लोग इधर उधर भाग रहे थे अपनी बची कुची चीज़ों के साथ. I reached the dormitory. We were short-staffed. So, unmindful of the glass cuts in my face, I got to work. Every minute, more and more injured persons were brought in. Every fourth person would die in front of us. उस वक्त सब कुछ नरक लग रहा था. The Bombay dock explosion.
Even today, at 6 minutes past 4, I have nightmares about the Bombay dock explosion. If I'm sleeping, I wake up. I'm trapped in a fire. Everything is ablaze. Me and 5 black skeletons which dance. Flaming drums of oil hurtle towards me. My hair bursts into fireworks. I run. But blazing bales of cotton chase me. I dive into the sea and a huge fire envelops the ships and warehouses. From a cloud, Comrade Shashi appears like Kanan Devi and tries to rescue me. Just then there is a blast and a tidal wave lifts Fort Steichen 60 feet into the air and smashes it down on Comrade Shashi's head. Both drown in the sea. Forever. This nightmare plays and replays in my head daily. That's why I have stopped sleeping. It's easier. Rather sleepless than anguished.
14th April 1944 was the day of the Bombay dock explosion. The official count was 336 dead, 1,798 injured. 2 days later, I saw some men come crawling towards me, कीड़ों की तरह. मुझे लगा बदमाशी कर रहे हैं. When they were near, I realized they had lost all their limbs. No hands, no legs. Day after day, the flow was unabated. As usual, the unofficial guesstimates were 10 times the official count. All bodies except those identified were buried at Worli.
The Bombay dock explosion. When I visited the docks to search for 3 of Gala Seth's Mazdoors and Kanwar Saab, the whole area was filled with European bodies. When examined, it was found out all of these were Indian dock workers and fire staff. Their outer skin had peeled off. That's why they looked white.
I shifted to Munjo Kutch. This after I had helped Nehru's daughter give birth to her firstborn. They named him Rajiv, Bonnie Baby. While sitting in the first class bogie and being cooled by ice slabs, Baba told me the Bombay dock explosion had transpired on the 32nd anniversary of the day the Titanic struck an iceberg. देखो, उन लोगों ने अपनी टाइटैनिक का कितना ढिंडोरा पीटा. और एक हैं हम.
Almost all the fire engines belonging to the Bombay Fire Brigade were destroyed by the first explosion. Firemen were moved in from Pune, Thana, Nashik. Soldiers destroyed specific buildings with army tanks to prevent the fire from spreading to new localities. Petty Officer T. Lewis of South Wales steered a truckload of ammunition out of the docks. The truck had no windows, no windscreen, no tires and no steering wheel.
The Bombay dock explosion. सच कभी बाहर नहीं आया. अंग्रेज तो ठीक है, उनका एजेंडा था. But why were we so careless? क्यों? कैसे? The whole thing was shrouded in security because of the war. News was suppressed. हर बार वही ड्रामाबाजी. Innocent lives were lost. Beggars, workers, street entertainers, hawkers, street women, family, friends, foes. डर लगता है. The trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure and the intelligent are full of doubt.
The Bombay dock explosion. The sheriff Shantidas Askuran requested people not to pay heed to rumours. But people did not pay heed to the sheriff. One man was arrested in Sholapur for rumour mongering. Food godowns which were built in 1875 were destroyed. 55,000 tons of food grains were lost. Lorries fitted with loudspeakers informed 2 million Bombay walas that there would be an uninterrupted supply of food grain. No one believed them. There was another irony. Merchants who were engaged in the black market lost heavily because they had kept items illegally in the godowns.
The Bombay dock explosion. I recall the overhead tram wires snapped. Local train services to VT station were suspended at Baikala. It was a boom period for taxi drivers. Baba says a meteorologist in Shimla recorded a tremor on the station seismograph. I can believe it. On that day, the world shuddered. I lost a piece of me.
My soul lost its stirrings. The government couldn't ever compensate that, no? But it was keen to compensate owners and tenants of ruined buildings, and so it decided to forego paperwork and proof. This was because it wanted to earn the goodwill of the people during the war. One Harshad Bhai took advantage of the loopholes and made an unscrupulous claim for a non-existent building. Up to that time, the government had paid 85,000 rupees against claims for damage by fire or blast. Traders like Gala Seth, who had shops on the ground floor of the buildings, never locked the cash petty. In the days after the Bombay dock explosion, he lost his money, valuables, jewellery due to vandalism. Since then, the sellers of safes, locks and keys have profited in Bombay.
The Bombay dock explosion. There was fire on the horizon for 3 months. All the buildings in a couple of mile radius of the dock smoldered. The fire had spread rapidly. Although everything was wrecked, the people showed courage and fortitude. The city bounced back to life. But not me.
After 14th April 1944, my life was tattered. You see, I am not a strong person in any case. Just did enough to keep body and soul together. I left the city, travelled for many years. There were so many disasters since. But the Bombay dock explosion was the worst. Everything turned into a dull shade of grey. My night had begun.
I never saw Comrade Shashi again.
I never met Shashiji. She must be living happily with Yajuvendra. Must have raised a family, opened 3 more shops, built 1 more building, got insured for health, started a nursing home, managed finances, become religious at a late age. Hey Bhagwan, what a calamity. What a mistake my life has been. Come on, mouth. You must not utter such despicable things. Can't go around with such a negative outlook. Shut up. This is not the time for regrets. I have seen worse dumps, terrible tragedies. Mine is a fairy tale in comparison.
One I loved and the other I lost. Sad, no? Comrade Shashi was the apple of my eye, and Yajuvendra was missing in action near the Naga Hills. The 2 men in my life both vanished into thin air.
My dear mouth, strange as it may sound, unbeknownst to you, good things happen too. You recall that filmy chap Devdutt? He didn't report to work on 14th April 1944. Touchwood. I'm told he became a movie star, changed his name to Dev Anand. I'm hoping he's earning some good money in the movie business. It's such a fickle industry. But much more importantly, there was the gold. I see some of you are waking up finally. Sitting bolt upright. Should I get on with it, my dear mouth? Well, here goes. Due to the Bombay dock explosion, the gold bars in the 31 crates in Fort Steichen flew into the city. Yes, sir. It rained gold bars. The rich, the poor, the cheery, the unhappy. So many people benefited as gold bars crashed through the roofs and onto their heads. As it is said, जब ऊपर वाला देता है तो छप्पड़ फाड़ के देता है. Barjorji Kuvarji Motiwala, who was a retired civil engineer in Bombay dying, returned the gold ignored. I know, since I used to pass his building, Kukana House in Girgaon, he was rewarded by the authorities. Shashiji would have said, Barjorji to bahut khandani tha. But the fact is, of the 130 gold ingots, only 43 were found. That too after a 3-year search of the docks, the surrounding locality, houses. So, what do you have to say to that, my dear mouth? 83 gold ingots and perhaps 83 millionaires are out there somewhere. As for me, I was half deaf after the explosion. I never married, remained a brahmachari. I loved once and for me the first was the best. Unless there's a miracle and Chumantar Kalimantar, the tattered screen at Derby Talkies comes alive and the lady with the funny face sings a song and brings back my Shashiji to me.
That was then, 14th April 1944. It's now 14th April 1994. I told Dr. Bhavna Parekh, I'm a birthday girl today. She wished me happy birthday and said, I'm still beautiful with beautiful eyes, a husn ki malika, sound as a bell. Except for some respiratory trouble. But I am covered medically, that is. All those years as a nurse has benefited. See, I'm repeating myself, bad girl. Then, even as I'm exiting the doctor's clinic, I hear the sound of hiccuping. Comrade Shashi. That must be Comrade Shashi. No, I'm become senile. Comrade Shashi must be a happily married grandfather with 101 grandsons. Or did he pass away at the Bombay dock explosion? I never heard about him since. No. Perish the thought. Oh, to hear him talk after he had downed a glass of 2 of Ace lime juice. Talked as though he was Gandhiji II. Today, if he were alive, we would be walking out of the dispensary together, hand in hand. He would say, चलो शशि जी, घर जाना है. यहाँ हम लेटेस्ट फिल्म देख सकते हैं. सुना है देवदास वापस बन रही है. ओ ए, क्या इतनी रात को टैक्सी मिलेगी? The inexhaustible reservoir of sorrow.
Why am I hiccuping? Shukar hai that old woman has left, or else it would be embarrassing. Shh, chup. What's that? The old woman has left something behind. What's this? Ribbons. So many of them. Navarasa, Navabhava, Navaratna. It reminds me of someone. Shashiji. Ah, come on, don't dream your impossible dreams, silly fellow. The girl must have married Yajuvandra and must be living happily ever after. Ah, now, don't wallow in self-pity. Eyes cry your last. The drying up of a single tear has more of honest fame than shedding seas of gore. Often have I wondered what if Shashiji and I had kept our appointment on 14th April 1944. I would have lived a different life, no? But promises are like the full moon. If they are not kept at once, they diminish day by day. Maybe one day I should go to Teen Sakina Manzil. I'm told it's renovated and is up and about. Perhaps one day in the near future, to relive old memories, the possibilities, the missed opportunities. But time is passing by in a hurry, and men like me cannot see their reflection because the water runs rapidly. I need still water. Yes, still water. That's why I swim in this day and age in the sea. Oh, how I wish this hiccuping ceases. Oh, that must be the doctor. It's my turn finally. Coming, Doctor Saab, coming. Don't go away. Do wait. Arey, at least someone wait for me. That's the play.
That was amazing.
Are we on? Oh, okay.
Shut up.
Sure, okay. Okay.
So I want to ask you, what was the motivation behind the play? Why this story? And so how did you go about documenting and collecting the facts about this?
Okay. So the story was not known to me. I wasn't around when this had happened in 44. And so like I mentioned in the introduction, there's a very dear friend we have who was a film guru for a lot of us. He used to run a film society club in the good old days called Screen Unit, Amrit Bhai. So he was very familiar with this entire incident and also knew a few of the people who were important. So, some of these names like Gala Seth, Himmat Bhai, some of the names that are mentioned in passing is also a tribute to a few of the people we had met. So initially it was basically, we divided the work on the play in 3 parts. He wanted me to make a film. Unfortunately I don't know how to make a film. I know how to write plays. So I said that मैं नाटक लिख सकता हूँ, फिर उसके बाद जो हुआ सो हुआ. So we divided the work on the play in 3 parts. Initially it was some reading material that he shared with me, some which he had collected. There were a couple of books. There was one by a cadet officer which was documentation, but from his point of view and his perspective. Then Amrit himself had taken a small handheld camera and done a very amateur shooting of the area, and actually the area in which the sort of, one of the, the parts of the ship had fallen through a building, to those like Lucky Mansion, Safia Manzil, some of those places we actually visited. Then we went to the to the synagogue because the boiler had fallen there and they were not able to take it out for almost a year to 2 years, and children had turned it into a kind of children's park because you could go and slide inside and so on and so forth. Then, for example, Sanders Road, a lot of the paths were wedged in over there. Some of the paths that had flown in near the railway station, railway tracks, it's still over there. So that was one part of it. Then the second part was meeting some of these people, which was the most important because fantastic stories to tell. Each of them, they had lived, and like this central character, somebody had lost his hearing simply because of the sound of the explosion. And don't forget, there were 2 explosions. The first one at 4:05 and then immediately. So a lot of people escaped from the first, but because of the impact of the second, they got affected because they were caught in the middle of the whole thing. And then the third was documentation at Asiatic, which was the hard work, which was to go back and see what else was happening in terms of context in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, what was happening with the Indian Congress movement. So these were the 3, this was the methodology, and the characters and things had not come at that time. It obviously evolved much later. But a lot of hard work went into it and collecting of material. So there was enough material to write, say, probably a a 100-hour play or a 200-hour play, because there were so many people who were affected by this, and businesses were affected, people's lives, marriages, all those sort of things. And the topography of Bombay, at least in that part, changed quite a bit after post 14th April. So a lot of that, and then of course one thought of these two characters and worked on that. So
are your characters based on the documentation that you did, or people?
To some extent, yeah. See, there was a challenge. I write sort of very boring history-based plays. So there was a challenge given to me by some friends saying, "Ki tum ek love story likho." Love story is traditionally something I don't like. I like great love stories, but I know I'm incapable of writing. So this was my effort of writing a love story. So I said that, okay, this is the best I can do. I have a boy, I have a girl, and if they were caught in a situation like this, what might have happened? So so that was a kind of a starting point, that I would try to write a love story which was unrequited love, not love that is realized. And then and a lot of people have also asked, why is the ending so tragic? Why don't they just meet at the end, and why don't you resolve it? Yeah. And the answer to that is very simple, because those 6.5 months, the amount of anguish that I saw, and the kind of tragedies that people have gone through, it's unfathomable. And so one wanted to get a sense, at least share a sense of that with the audience, or the person who's reading the play, that the tragedy that unfolded in those sort of few months was unfathomable, and that it was beyond your own sort of realm of sort of understanding of things. And to give a sense of that, so the personal in a way becomes a sort of universal in that sense. The story, or the fact that they are not able to share so many things and so on, that becomes a representative of the story of Bombay in a way. What happened to people in this city as well. So that was one of the main reasons for this. It was a risk that we took.
So along the way, did you feel that this might be one of our contributions, or this is a way in which we could bring out the stories of these people? And was it your what should I say?
Was it your aim to just tell the story what had happened in 1944?
Yeah, that is of course one part of it. But if I had only done that, it might have become a documentary, a pure documentary in that sense, about which I personally don't have a problem. But the idea was also to sort of make a connection with what is happening in Bombay, and I knew that the play would be performing in 2004 in India, in Bombay, wherever. So there was always a need to also look back at this whole process of history. The more important thing is that the way we are fortunately or unfortunately taught history or anything in our classrooms, or the way the process of pedantry is, that we always look at the mainstream history in a larger sense. So the little stories, the smaller characters are never sort of in the context. We are never able to understand the contribution that they have made to our entire national building process. So there's another play that we've written which was performed here called Mahadev Bhai. So again, that was an attempt to look at what was the second and third tier in the Congress hierarchy. We always get stuck with Nehru, Gandhi, Sardar, Azad. And the fact that, whatever it was worth, the Congress at that time when they created that whole thing, it was a very strong cadre-based party, and there were innumerable other people down the line. So when all these great national leaders were in prison, the movement was continuing. There was obviously a reason for that you had fantastic men to follow up, which is a problem. We keep saying political vacuum. So an attempt to also look at what is happening below the scene, in the sense, not the obvious. So this play, Mahadev Bhai, to some extent, Cotton 56, that's another play that we've written. So in that again, we are looking at this history from the other perspective, that the obvious history is there, and then there is always the other history which nobody talks about, because it's not convenient to talk about it, or it makes people uncomfortable. So that is the history which one tries to represent on stage. But important chapters in our life which we should be talking about, shouting about. So yeah.
So plays like Mahadev Bhai and Sri Sakina Manzil, they are not based on contemporary history. They are staged far behind in history. Also, the people who know about the history can connect with those plays. But what about you have said that these plays are staged in Europe, etc. How they connect with the play?
That was just 4 or 5 shows, not too many shows. With Sakina Manzil, I don't think they had a problem. It's a love story. So, a suggested love story. So, at that level it interests anyone and everyone. I mean, the great stories are, the great novels, the great cinema is based on that. So you use that as a device to tell the other things that you want to discuss about. If I went into any place, even if I go to say, Bikaner or Bhopal and start talking about 1944 dock explosion, it will not make sense. It's just the characters that hopefully, is a peg to bring the audience, attract the audience. With Mahadev Bhai, what we've tried to do, I mean, how successful we don't know, but what we try to do is that the story is told from the point of view of one of you. I mean, it's a very young man who's telling the story, and the story keeps going back and forth in time, but the times that it's happening is now. And again, it's very interesting, there's since you've seen the play, there is that bit where he talks about Godhra and that it was the symbol of Hindu-Muslim. And when the play was staged, it happened precisely, I think, 4.5-5 months after the Godhra incident in Gujarat. So, the location of that scene in the play and the context of that suddenly brings the whole play alive. That you are talking about an incident 100 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever, but because of its importance and relevance, otherwise who would have bothered about that particular convention? It's a very small convention that took place in the Panch Mahal in Godhra, So it's the location of that history in today's time that makes it relevant or makes it come alive, So for instance, even she discusses a lot of things like, her character, that is that automobile, motor pollution, or there's too many migrants coming into the city, refugees, gandagi hai, ye hai, wo. These are all today's issues as well. So even the discussion or theory on urbanization, what we have been talking about, you realize there has been no momentum that has taken place in the last 60 years in the city, So in that sense, the issues then and issues now broadly are similar.
You said that the play was also translated in other Indian languages.
That's right.
Did you feel, if you were part of the audience, that there was a distinct difference between the audience that saw the play in English and the audience that saw the play in other regional languages?
So when it was translated in Marathi was translated by a friend. It never got staged, but we had a reading. This was again a very close friend of mine called Chetan Datar. He had translated it. So he'd seen the production. He knew me. He knew his Bombay very well. So there was no difficulty in that part of it because he's probably as passionate about this incident, and we both share a common love for the city itself. The problem surprisingly was in Dutch, and Dutch, the problem was not really with the text or the characters or the incident itself. The problem was with food items. Things like when she talks about sev puri and all these other local, it was very, very, very difficult to explain to them what these things are. So initially we sort of showed them some photographs, but then again taste is again relative. Then Kinnari, that's my wife, she had to join me later. So she actually packed some of this thing and brought it 2 weeks later because we were seated in Brussels. So she got some of these food items and they shared and they ate it. Not that it sort of improved the translation, but certainly it started making a lot more sense to them. What is this roadside food, So food was one concern that was there. And then again, the sense of, their idea of urbanization and our idea of city planning is sort of vastly different. So when we talk of these things and we talk of lack of civic sense or overcrowded or the sort of lack of planning, when we talk about it, we are, we can compare ourselves to a Cairo or a Rio de Janeiro, not to a Brussels or to an Amsterdam. So that was again an issue that they had. And of course, the savageness of some of our city, our city politics, that is something that they don't understand. So,
could you also tell the students about the stage setting, because you have something very specific
right
that you've mentioned about the stage setting of
this, but yeah. So Teen Sakina Manzil was produced by a group called Working Title. It was directed by Gemini Pathak, who played Mahadev Bhai, those of you saw. So Gemini was someone with whom I was working with, and I was writing a few plays for him or his group. Pooja's character was played by Suruchi Aulak, who was married to him at that time. And so the stage direction I sort of was that keep it very simple, keep it absolutely minimalist. Let it be like a storytelling session that you have somebody seated under a tree and narrating a story. Let it convey a sense of that. Don't get into too much. Around 2003, 2004, we were all going through this crisis in Indian theatre that actors act too much. Indian actors act too much. So we were all trying to sort of find a way in which, or a mechanism or a method through which they can cut down on their acting. So one of the things we were trying to do with Sakina Manzil was ensure actors don't act. So if they are playing the old characters, they don't do this whole Sri Ram Lagu, very overstated and overdone kind of a thing. Or when they are falling in love, it's again gushing and so on. So the idea was to play the lines, tell the story. So this was the one big brief. The other thing which I think from Gemini's point of view was very scary was he was getting 2 pages at a time, and this was I think opening at the Prithvi Festival, and there was a deadline and a date given to Prithvi. And these guys were obviously rehearsing the play, so they didn't know what was going to happen next, and they were getting these 2 pages, 3 pages by email. They would be rehearsing it. After 2 days, the next 2 page would come, and till I think the very end, they didn't know what the end was. So, and I remember when I finally wrote the last scene, I had to fly out. I had to go to Egypt for some reason, and I was in Egypt, and I got an SMS. No, they have to meet and they have to remarry. This can't be the end. There was sort of huge protestations, but they had no time. They had a week to open, so. That was it, and then I think the opening happened. It was pretty good. They were a little sort of rehearsed for the opening shows. Then, as the play they kept performing, they grew, and I think that was the music was fairly minimal. They used just 2 chairs, and so that was the area. And then to depict the docks explosion, they had a mat on which they just threw some red light. And then they played with the siren as a sort of soundtrack. So that was what they did. There was nothing sort of overdone that, lashe gir rahi hai or khoon kharaba or nothing like that. It was left to the imagination of the audience that the words would hopefully convey the sense of whatever was. Yeah.
The writing of these interlinked monologues, you conceptualized this right from the beginning, or, it sort of happened slowly as you were working on the script?
Yeah. I have no clue. No clue. Well, I have no memory. I know it's a good question, and sometimes when I read this play, I say, "Wow, that's really cool." But I have no clue how it was done. Yeah, I know I knew who my 2 actors were, Gemini and Suruchi. I knew what their strengths are, broadly speaking. I also knew that we are going to play it in a particular way. So these were the givens for me. I of course had the material and the story. No, I don't remember this at all. Yeah. So,
and any special reason behind naming both of them Shashi?
my mother's Shashi. So yeah, and this is a sort of typical Indian thing. Kiran, Shashi, Divya. These are names you never know the the gender of the. So it was just playing on that. Yeah. So in every play I have characters who are people from my life or around my life. So it's a small way of saying thank you to them. So this was for my mother, and she was very thrilled because when she saw the first show, she saw it with Shashi Kapoor. So she was maha thrilled because after the show she walked up to him, introduced herself and said, "Hi Shashi, I am Shashi." So so she was quite happy about it. Yeah.
Sir, can you give some tips? Actually, we are all undertaking a course in creative writing. So, can you give us some tips or some exercises which we should practice to improve our writing skills or something?
Okay. Right now? Yeah. No, we can sit and doing it here is a bit difficult. The best thing, and I think everybody would say this to you, is to keep writing. Number one, and the second thing is to read a bit, which we are sort of increasingly turning into a sort of.
Slightly. I have
Sure.
Because this is also meant for people who are not likely to interact with us in any way. I think the question, if I understand you well, it comes from this desire to also sort of this curiosity also about other writers. Each one will have their own mysterious pathways, but is there something that you would like to share in terms of how you got started writing?
Yeah.
And if there is something of the process that you can share.
Sure. So I 3 things. In my case, I'm slightly fortunate. I belong to a college which was very strong. In Bombay, you have a tradition of the intercollegiate. You, as a sort of Marathi, would know about that. So it's a very strong tradition. So the tradition helps you in many ways. In the sense, you know for certain that what you're going to write will be produced. Then you're broadly working with a bunch of friends or colleagues from your class or the neighboring class or whatever it is. So it helps you to write this 30-minute thing, and you are able to rehearse for X amount of time, for which the college commits some amount of money and space. So that was a big help. And the other thing is, because you were part of Mithiba, it had a tradition of having an Ashutosh Gawarikar and an Naushil Mehta and a Mahendra Joshi. The seniors would always be around to guide you. So there was always this process of mentoring, which is a very Indian way of doing things. There's always someone around to mentor you. So if you wrote a really bad play, there would be somebody there to tell you to rewrite it or to redo it or save the play if they didn't have time or something like that. So broadly speaking, you would read a lot of other plays, and so you knew that these are the 25 to 50 really good one-act plays that had been produced or published in this country. That is. And so basically what probably some other young person in another part of the country might have taken 3 years, you learn all that in sort of 6 months time during that intercollegiate phase. And that is invaluable experience. And once the play is staged, because the amount of resources and all that is pooled in, that plays a big role in doing all this, watching the process of rehearsal. So again, I was very lucky. I wrote a play in my first play, I think it was called IMI. And we had a fairly noted stage director in those days called Akash Khurana. So he had directed it, and so two things happened. One was he brought in a professional expertise. So it was good to see how a professional theatre director is dissecting your text and adding elements to it which you never thought and imagined. So then the process became, automatically the level goes up straight away from playing gully cricket, you go straight away into time shield and Kanga League, so that helps you straight away, and then after that you go up the thing. The other thing about writing is, it's hard work. I mean, there is no mystery to the process. It's hard work, it's very lonely work. All the great writers that whether it's a Marquez or it's a Bashir or a Premchand, they would have they say that it's a job of whimsical and job inspiration aaya. But a lot of the great writers have been known to get up at 6:37, follow a very, very hard ritual, write for 4 hours, come what may, good, bad, indifferent, learn to reject those texts. So that habit of writing for 4 hours daily is invaluable. You could write whatever you want. You could be writing letters to the editor, you could be writing short stories, you could be writing poems, songs for movies, whatever. But the habit of writing is a constant one, and it's something that you can get good at only when you keep doing it day in and day out. So, and I think most of the greats do it. Even now, I mean, there's this fantastic book I have of Borges. It's a biography, one of the writers I admire, and even though he was blind, he would constantly be writing, and that is, you cannot, it's like Tendulkar going to the nets and doing it every day. So it's like the writers have to write. There's no escaping that.
Also
yeah.
Milton.
And Milton.
Yes,
Yeah,
John
yeah,
Milton.
yeah. So, yeah.
So the people who were there in 1944 and whom you talked to, so were they? Did they have a chance to watch this?
Some of them did. Some of them, yeah. It's a bit difficult because a lot of them were very emotional about the whole experience, and for them it all came back. So they obviously did not look at it as a piece of theatre or a piece of art or anything. For them it was much, much more. So it was at two levels. One was a certain amount of catharsis because of what, and they were meeting them after the show used to be a terrible experience because they would be very, very stirred by the whole experience. The second thing used to be that they were very grateful that somebody had taken the effort of recording this whole thing, documentation, which is something as a country we are quite careless about. I mean, not just this incident, but innumerable other things. We are very shabby about that whole process, and that they were, I think, quite grateful about.
So when you had these conversations with them, were they sort of spontaneous or did you record them or something?
No, never record. Yeah,
But spontaneous, right?
yeah, but see, I told you I had two friends, Amrit Gangar, and there's another friend of ours called Dharamshi Bhai, who's like the age-old Socrates of Bombay. I've been very lucky with all my plays that I've had someone like that who has opened up sort of doors for me. So it's so that opportunity was there. So I had access to people who otherwise would be a bit difficult. Also, the other thing I'm slightly lucky is that I can speak about 6 or 7 languages. So it's not that language is a great sort of so English, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Tamil, whatever. So in this case, it used to be a lot of Gujarati, a bit of broken Marwadi and so on. Those are little things that matter. No recording because people get uncomfortable. No making notes while they're talking because that then it becomes a kind of formal space. Yeah. Here this would be interesting, and these are wonderful people. So they would sort of, if they felt adequately, they would jump into a cab and say ki chalo apne godi par jaiye and I will show you ki kya shoot thayu etle whatever. So those kind of things, or a place where they've eaten. So when this Keshav Rao Naik's incident, which I mentioned, where he meets him in the wayside, and one of them actually took us to that, and today, even today, the statue is still there in Paidoni. Of Keshav Rao Naik. It's there in that basti and so on, and again it's typical Bombay because they have built a tea stack around it, and so that's that whole thing is undermined. But that's actually a legacy. If you look at it historically, it should be something that we should celebrate because you obviously contributed a lot to labor law in that particular area. But those kind of things, so they would feel inspired and actually take you to those spaces, And this one gentleman who I had met, he was fantastic because he was about 87 or 88, and he used to, in the morning I said, Savare aau tamne malwa? He said, nahi, Savare to hu, I go to Chowpatty for a swim. And and he's 87 and his body was very, very weak, but he would do the swimming exercise every day and for an hour. So when I met him, I actually met him at Chowpatty, and then from there we went to his home. So those kind of things. And he had lost about partial eyesight because the second blast, when it took place, the glasses had smashed in the house. And then some of those pieces had,
So the multilinguality that was there in your experience of gathering the
was shared. Yeah.
It was shared.
Yeah.
And then it also came into the play, right?
That's
because
right.
It shifts between
Correct.
the English and there is a little bit of...
Right, and in the text again we are confined because of what is written, but the actors play that up a little more, did that a little more. Gemini himself is multilingual, likewise Suruchi was. So we play that up a little more. I mean, today whatever one may say about Mumbai, I mean, we hate it and whatever it is, love it or whatever the choice is, but the fact that it is a beautiful city. And the fact is it did a lot of things normally and very, very, in a very casual way, which a whole lot of other cities have struggled to do. And this was one of them, this whole thing of shared histories and many stories, being able to exist simultaneously, that's a wonderful thing. It doesn't happen in other parts of the world, and so that was something that we got a sense of when we were there. And what we did with the actors was we spent a lot of time, not a lot of time, we spent some time because actors are actors, they need to do other things, they need to rehearse plays and learn lines, but we took them for a small tour around and a couple of these people they met. So they got a sense of, where all this is coming from.
One last question. The very exact information that you have of the cargo on the ship.
Yes.
That was got from the...
So that was got from this one book that I picked up on the Carrot, and then I cross-referenced that and I got that from the Asiatic as well, because there is the Gazetted, there is something called the Gazetted, I have my notes somewhere, but something called the Gazetted in which there is a documentation of this whole thing, and that cargo was, that's exact. There's not an item which I've removed nor an item which I've added. Yeah. And it was very interesting, speaking about translation in other languages when and I used to always feel very uncomfortable with that scene because even Gemini commented, just rattling out this is like statistics and audiences will switch off. And when Rudy is this friend of ours in Brussels who translated the play into Dutch, and when he saw it, I said, so now we come to the really tough part of the play, and he said, why do you say that? And he said, this is poetry, and it is, because if you read the items in a row, it's such a unnatural sort of gathering of 8 totally different items in that one whole. And how could that have happened? I mean, how can a human being even think of doing that? But they played it very differently in Dutch. They had these two, here the actors were much younger, there the actors were much older. There's this apparently very sort of renowned actress over there in Europe, I forget her name, but she is like the Meryl Streep of European theatre. So she and this other gentleman who was a retired actor but had come out of retirement to play. And then they had this one man on sax who was there to give the resonance to the whole thing. But they played it, they didn't move from their chair, and I mean I don't understand Dutch at all, but it was a stunning experience. So very, very beautifully done. And they used a huge screen. It was an enormous stage, so if you've been to the Jamshed Baba theatre, it's as big as that in terms of stage space. So there's just 2 solitary actors, and then just these scraps of paper keep coming, and I don't know how they do that, but these scraps of paper keep coming, and at the end of it there is this mosaic on the floor, and they have this beautiful backdrop which keeps changing, very slightly done. It's not as if it's Bombay, but there's just a touch of that. Again, very nicely done, very. But it's very understated, it's very European, it's not like us, we are a little, thoda chillana rehta hai humko, and
Would end this session. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you.